Alright, we're going to finish taking a look at the end of this XL2 versus Grizzly series with map 4. So, something that always needs to be mentioned at the beginning of the games is basically understanding and predicting what the enemy wants to do. So, basically, this is all basically pretty standard. Sometimes you run a D.Va, but most of the time you run Roadhog. This is all pretty standard, but they're running Genji on defense. So, if you're going to play shield battle, a lot of times the team on offense is going to have the disadvantage because you're going to have the shield down already, and then they're going to have to place their shield down after the fact that you've already had yours down, but yours is going to be on cooldown faster. But whenever you run Genji, you're not going to be running as much shield damage if you have Mirror. But they have a little bit more damage on their side, so they should expect, Grizzly should expect to win the shield battle, and Mangachu should look to get value and look to execute the enemy snipers. So that just needs to be the understanding going in. As well as Grizzlies is just running Mercy heals, so they don't have Zen. They don't have Zen damage, but they exchange that for D.Va. Pretty standard giving of ground right here. The problem is Mangachu is playing here, and they're attempting to play shield battle basically, where they were playing shield v here, and then Spirit is playing up here on the high ground, and he is able to shoot over top of the shield or just burst the shield down, and they're able to push together. So this isn't the way that you want to be playing this comp. You want to be having flank pressure with your Widow or your Genji if you're XL2. Because if you basically stand main v main, you're going to have a problem. This is exactly what they want to do. They want to have flank pressure. They want to bait them in. So they want to bait them in past this point so that the tanks are over here and they can't contest anymore, and then they want to have people wrap over here or all the way over here on the other side and have people flank from over there. But this is the more safer side over here. The problem with giving up this much ground, though, is that they have one fight here, basically. So if they get wiped at all, then they're going to be losing the point. Grizzlies could have taken ground better there with their snipers. Having Daehoon not play in as aggro of a spot where he has the potential of getting picked off. You can just play really safe and have your snipers just take ground really slowly. Because there isn't a lot of threat on the tanks. Oh, this isn't 1080. There we go. Okay, we see a swap from Grizzlies. They swap their Hanzo to Tracer. This isn't ideally the person they want on Tracer. Spirit usually likes to play Projectile, or he likes to play Soldier, but they're running it because Zapri's better on Widow. But this is exactly what you want if you're on the Grizzlies. You want to split the other team up. You basically had Spirit get a ton of value from just showing himself. So we can see Spirit wrapped, and as soon as you have this potential where you're calling Spirit out right here, you saw 3 people turned on him, and then immediately Zapri killed someone because he had more free room. Somewhat the problem with this comp, you don't get a lot of room with the Widow. You kind of have to go for flank angles. And if you do end up losing your tanks like they did, then it's really hard for them to recontest. You can see Grizzlies was playing it correctly. They had triple tank, and they want to focus on basically taking fights in the cart. XL2 wants to focus flanks. Grizzlies doesn't get split up. They focus the cart together, and they're able to take the point. So this was discussed more in today's broadcast, but it was basically an understanding of why Nene isn't playing in a lot of these matches, and so there's some planning that has to go into XL2 that I don't think any other team will have to do. It's basically they have to plan around if they're going to win or lose. So if I was their team, I'd keep things very simple, and then we'd split scrim time basically between the three of the DPS, because we don't know which DPS are going to be playing. And you ideally want Nene Flower, I think, on this map, just so that you can run the Tracer and Widow, because Mangachu can't really play Widow, and so you'd want Flower playing Widow, but then you'd want Mangachu on Tracer, but he doesn't really play Tracer, he plays Projectile. So I think as a plan, you have to plan very specific strats. So I'd play probably more Junkrat Widow or Pharah. No, not Pharah. What am I saying? Not Pharah. You'd plan ideally to have Flower and Nene on this map, but sometimes when you can't, yeah, you'd try to run this. So you'd try to run Tracer Genji or Widow Genji when you can. But I think you'd want to run a Tracer when you can, especially if it's in this matchup where it's Flower versus Spirit Tracer. I think that's actually a good matchup that you want to take. So I didn't really talk about that recon test. Probably should talk about it. You go back a little bit further. Explain how they take ground. So the tanks are pushing up right here. They have an Orisa shield, so the Widow has a lot of room. Basically, they're trying to take as much ground as they can without having the Widow take sights of them. It's good they take a lot of ground. And Flower's in position right now. This is really, really good. This is really good planning just for the fact that like it's pretty simple pathing. So like you all just wrap around behind this building and then you push on the high ground itself. And then you can have the window up here. You have the Tracer drop out of it, so the Tracer's now on the ground. And whenever you force the dive, you ideally want to do this if you're playing against Orisa. You want to have flanks set up behind her, but if you have the Tracer on the ground right here, you can just catch the people as they're on the ground. So this is good planning. You really just need to get a good flank against a team that's running Orisa, because once they're set up on offense, they can get just these rotations of fights back to back to back, where the Orisa gets the shield set up, and it's really hard to push into them because the Widow or Bastion has so much free room. But once you actually do reset it, excuse me, you get this chance to have like setups where you can have people hiding. Cloneman needs to be careful when he's peeking here. They don't have Mercy, they have Lucio Zen, so they have low healing, so he wants to be careful with when he's peeking. Also, something I forgot to mention, Grizzlies is doing this weird thing where they keep swapping Graceful and Pog onto each other's picks, basically. I don't understand it, really. I don't think Orisa's that high understanding, like, super skill-leveled character. I think a main tank should definitely be playing it 90% of the time. And then you should have your main diva be on diva, because it makes sense. I haven't seen the best results from them running this lineup itself, and so I'd like for them to not do that in the future. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because they end up having to swap. Like, whenever they do have to swap, if they want to play their best Winston, like I assume Pog is, then they would have to end up switching anyways, and then they'd just kill their own diva ult charge. Okay. I keep going off on tangents. Let's talk about this fight. Get you Blades. He goes out into the open. It's pretty risky. So, sorry I keep yawning. Jeez. XL2 wants to have these faster fights here because they have dive. They want to line of sight and they want to execute on this Orisa, so they want to ideally flank. You don't have to go through main here. You don't have to force a blade through main. It's a bit unfortunate. Clone Man goes down. I think Midnight was just suiting up again. So they lose a lot of people. So you don't need to force main v main. Like, you don't need to dive up through main and then play aggressively on them. Especially whenever you can just force up these stairs with the Tracer or the Genji. And then have your Winston or Diva also force through main. And so I've talked about this before on the other map. But basically, if you send multiple angles on the Orisa, she can't do anything. She puts down her shield and then there's an open gap. And if you have your tanks diving from the front side, it doesn't really matter. Winston can be zapping through the shield, and then you want your Genji and your Tracer fighting people from behind. I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I mean, I didn't sleep that well, but... So you can see, it's another case of, if you don't take a fight fast enough and clean enough with the dive, the team with the Orisa and with the Widow gets to slowly push up. So you need to have these very clean understandings of where you want to fight with the dive. If you're going to play dive versus Widow Orisa, you can't have these fights where it kind of like goes slow and you trade somewhat evenly. Like, they're always going to win because the Mercy is going to out-sustain your healing. You want to have fast, speed-boosted fights. You want to have flanks where Widow isn't just standing here shooting for free. You want to have people rapping. There we go. That was good. The same flower got headshot, but I mean, you can see how instant that was. Amp speed boost, instantly kill someone. I think it's a bit sloppy here with their target prioritization. You need to definitely prioritize killing the Widow because you can't give her any space in fights because she'll just land headshots, but this was good by XL2. They've been pretty good with their defenses. I think they've been better like using Junkrat, Widow, Pharah and stuff on defense, and I haven't really seen them play that aggressively with their dive on defense, but usually their defenses are pretty good. Planning and diving wise. They're running mirror comps now, so you need to play a little bit differently if you're on defense because you don't want the fights taking to the cart. You want to not let supports get through. Basically trading evenly. Except, if we go back here, we look at which picks are being prioritized, so... It's important to note which characters are getting traded in these, because ideally you want your tanks to be traded first. You don't want your supports to be traded, especially if you're on defense. If you're making any trades at all, because you want your supports to be staying alive. So we can just pay attention to who they're focusing. So Zapri is hitting Mangachu and forcing him out right now. They're prioritizing killing Mangachu because they know he has Blade. But you can see what Grizzlies is prioritizing here. Both the supports are dead. Versus Genji, Winston being traded. Okay, so now if we look, sustain-wise, full HP, full HP, full HP, full HP. Traded 2, so 2 are dead on both sides. But we see right here, like 2/3 HP, missing a third, half. This is important because if you want to continue to hold, you have to play mega aggressively now on defense if you want to continue to hold this position. But you don't have any sustain anymore. Well, the team on offense can now play cart because they have the heal advantage and they have both their supports still. So even though you trade evenly, you see how the picks will actually create an advantage with who you kill. Because it doesn't really matter if the trades are even, as if you kill the supports and you don't have any supports fall on your team, because they're just going to have more sustain and they're going to have more effective health. So I think they were trying to force, XL2 was trying to force their tanks to get the trance out so they could get a free blade here. I'm not sure if it was coordinated well enough, though. I imagine Mangachu was calling to Blade, but we can see Grizzly's last fight was also prioritizing Mangachu and shutting him down. I would really like for Goliath to use trance aggressively here. I think Goliath held trance way too long there. He may have been just planning it and like calling to use it just to counter the blade, but we can see way too many of his members on his team fell before the blade even came out, so they were cleaning kills and just waiting. They weren't even pulling the blade because they were killing the members. And then when he did trance, it was just a Baby Diva and a Lucio on cart, so they weren't getting that much value. And they were looking to get value from their own blade, so I would have liked for them to have XL2 to have used trance to enable Mangachu to have more freedom to use his blade. But we can see he holds it too long, and they don't end up getting value from it. Especially whenever you're being that hard pressured here, you really need to use your ults aggressively to take room. You aren't in the room where you can have the freedom to like really use an ult just to counter one ult. Like you really have to use it to make space so that you can keep a hold of the point. I'm not sure if that was poor planning, but I assume that that's poor mid team fight shot calling. So I think this is important. As you develop as a team, you develop a structure as a team. And I think mid team fight shot calling is something that you have to have everything else set up so that like you have a voice that can be listened to mid team fight. So in that instance, we can talk about it over again, but basically you set up your line of communication so you understand like what roles people are doing, but then you have a central voice so that if a fight is taking if it's going a certain way that you don't want it to, so say you make a plan beforehand, before the fight, you're like, okay, we're going to use Transfer Blade, simple plan. But once you're at this point, sometimes you need that central voice or that main shot caller to be like, we need to use trance regardless. Like, it doesn't matter at this point, we need to use the trance to win this fight. And I think sometimes people will get confused, or maybe there wasn't that call made, but I think if you have a main shot caller on your team, you need to get them to that point where they understand that this is their role, and then you can have these mid-team fight adaptions that will enable you to win fights, because right there I think they really need a trance to enable the blade. But that only comes from advanced planning and understanding like your shot caller's role, and then having your team follow up on it. So like, I don't know who's the caller on this team. Maybe it's Adam. But if I was Adam, or if I was coaching Adam, I would have told him that that's something that we need to work on, is pulling the trigger. It's partially on Goliath, but partially on whoever's the main shot caller. I don't know who that is, so. We can see it's basically a mirror of the last... It's very similar comps. It's basically Widow, Hanzo both take room. They have double healer here instead of a Diva, but it basically performs the same. Grizzlies, on this comp though, they have more shield damage with the Junkrat. So You can't prioritize shooting shield v shield here. They have to get flanks if you're playing on XL2. Because Grizzlies is going to have the superior shield damage. You can see there's trading of shields, but grenades are falling. You don't want to have these situations where there was a lot of trading just behind the shields. You want to have these situations right here where you're creating angles with your snipers. You can peek these walls pretty easily as well because the Mercy can just swing around and res if you get shot from here. This is the angle you want though if you're Flower. He missed some shots, sadly. I think that was a really good opportunity for him, though, to actually land some shots. If you have your Hanzo, so if you have your Hanzo playing over here, or over here, you create this pressure, so you have like a Hanzo pressure, and this is assuming Widow's always going to be over here, but you have this pressure, so if you're Zapri basically on the other team, you have this now pressure where you're standing right here, and you have to decide basically, do I swing behind the car and then prioritize hitting the Hanzo who is standing over here, and then giving up this room for their Widow? Or do you stand out here in the open as Widow and then try to take basically the 1v2 without your shield, and then just try to take the fight and kill both the snipers? That's ideally what you want to force if you're XL2. Is forcing their Widow into awkward situations where you can either Sonic her so your Widow gets the advantage, or taking multiple angles on her with both snipers. Because you win from picks here. Your Hanzo ult isn't going to do anything, basically. It's kind of zoning, but it's not the same level of zoning as Junkrat. So if you're trading Hanzo shots on tanks versus Junkrat, you're always going to lose. I think this is good right here, though. Have pick advantage, suck over top the shield. That's really good. You can see this Hanzo ult doesn't do anything, but you're not meant to make big Hanzo ult plays. I think this is good. Them taking ground slowly. So something XL2 needs to realize is they have swaps. So they need to decide if they're going to swap themselves or if they're going to continue to run this double sniper, because they need to play differently. So if you're playing double snipers versus dive, instead of playing the flank pressure like what they were playing before, they need to play more so with their Orisa and play longer range. You don't want these close fights where you're getting flanked behind. So I think this is good. They play it slow. Get the kills, walk up slowly together. That's what XL2 wanted. They wanted to kite, and that was really good. I couldn't really see where Grizzlies was trying to force from, but it didn't seem like they had like a good flank really set up. I like this play on offense. You a lot of times just want your D.Va or Roadhog to be sitting there on the point, and then have your Orisa set up here, so it's enabling a push on the cart, and then your Orisa and Widow can sit together at farther range and just snipe. So this is good kiting. Good kiting. That's a good plan. Taking a little bit long to kill the Trace, that's fine though. You can see how hard it was for Grizzlies to actually force. They had to run through like multiple angles, multiple spots where they were going to get hit by arrows or Widow headshots, so There's a counter Widow now. I didn't really see where this Genji was, but it's getting a lot of resets. It's fine. They're Grizzlies is inevitably going to get dive ults, and then they're going to like jump on top of you. So we can see XL2 swaps their comp immediately. Okay, we can see that they have a hard reset, like full 6-man reset on their ults. So I need to look to bait ults here, and then they want to play aggressively enough where they can bait enemies onto themselves, and then they want to kite back. That was a really good punish. Not really anywhere for Flower to go there. Okay. So something that needs to be realized is whenever you're switching comps up all the time, you're basically changing your identity a lot of what you actually want to do. So I think Clone Man assumed, because they swapped technically to dive, that they were going to be diving here, but they don't have a Lucio to get people that are caught up. Mangachu, I don't know if he communicated that he didn't have dash here. I would have liked for them to been having a conversation of, can we dive this? And then if Mangachu does not have dash, then he says no. But it looks like Clone Man was trying to make space, but they're making space, but like there's freedom of this Widow where they're pinned down on the point whenever their Winston's now dead, and you get a lot of free pressure alleviated from the Widow, and so they lose all that. So you do want to dive with your Winston, but you still want to have that backup so that you can have value from it. Okay, they swap again. It's mirror this time, okay. Trying to take the Widow v Widow. I don't like Flower taking this angle right here. It's really hard for him to take any space. Unless his tanks like end up like super diving something that's discorded. It's really hard for them to take any space. But because we can see his angle basically from, if he's standing up here in this room, this window up here, his angles are now like this. So really this is his like area of where he can be shooting things at, and it's like not a big area where you actually are looking to punish things like the enemy Widow, who a lot of times is going to be playing all the way back here and can free shoot your tanks as they're swinging out. So I would have liked for them to have a plan to have Widow standing over here potentially, and then maybe have a tank with her or Mercy, and then you walk out together and you pressure the tanks who are either standing over here at the door, and you can shoot them from multiple angles. Because the tanks are basically soft holding. Like where Pog is standing right now, you're basically looking to just soft hold right here and then jump back. But whenever the whole team's funneling right here, you have freedom to just jump back and know you're not going to be clipped from over here. So you can see they're getting stuffed. They really don't have the same pressure. Flower now walked to that side, but I would have liked for them to have done it at the same time. So we can see the time that they did it, they had like all 6 members come out from over here, and it didn't really work. They got like super hard stuffed, and there wasn't really any ults that happened that denied them. And then we can see Clone Man came out, tried to pressure on the cart, and then as he was jumping back up onto the high ground, Flower then started to peek out over here, and you can see he's starting to get pressured now. And they had to rotate to go help him. So you can see there's a bit of confusion here with like actually what they want to be doing on XL2. And I think this is kind of subject to having this many swaps in your comp. You have to keep changing your mindset basically of how you're going to be playing. There's not a lot of room Mangachu can get here. They do an okay job of punishing the tank, but I mean they're trading tank health right now. That was a really good deflect. The problem is Zapri has been basically uncontested this entire time. So he's gotten picks midway through the fight, and it's weakened XL2's dive, so they haven't been able to hard dive as hard as I imagine they wanted to. They got the kills though, and they've gotten the push is what they want. But you can see how much they had to commit to actually get that fight, and Grizzlies basically didn't have to commit much at all. So Grizzlies' recontest here is going to be much more powerful. And I think this is just basically subject to, or it's gone down to XL2 having some very sloppy pushes that just ate up a lot of their time bank. And then Grizzlies being able to just dry hold them, so not have to use any ults. Maybe even get an ult out of XL2 and still get the defensive hold. Yeah, there's not a lot they can do. Like, XL2 has to be playing the point right here, and Grizzlies has freedom to wrap around Fidget Spinner and actually just get on top of them. They were in a really tough position there, but if you're XL2, I really would like for them to take a look at their offense and basically understand where they're going wrong with their planning, because sometimes they have the right idea, but it's taking them multiple pushes to actually get that idea set up. So maybe having a map review before a series or just doing it in general, you need to discuss what's happening with these pushes that's like really eating up time and like forcing them to have these like pushes that are smart later rather than as soon as like they have the chance to do them. So it's taking them like one or two fights of doing like really poor fights to actually get the good fight that they actually want in their third one. And it's not because of ults or anything, it's literally just because of the position of the characters. So overall, I think XL2 had some like really poor offensive planning, and I think that's something they really need to work on. Their defensive actually was pretty decent, I think, across all the maps. On some of them, like I think Lunar was really good, but other maps it was just really weak. And so I think that's something they really need to prioritize, is making sure everyone's on the same page and making sure you go over your defaults and understand what your team comp wants to work on and like what you want to be doing with your team comp, because a lot of times they're playing team comps like the wrong way. So like, for an example, they were playing the snipers incorrectly. They want to be playing it a different way, and I think you just have to go into a map review and like talk to the people in the team and basically describe to them, all right, what is the role that you want to achieve? Let's understand what everyone's goal is in this team comp so we can look to abuse that advantage that we have with our double snipers and then push that forward, and we aren't like playing our comp the wrong way and then creating a disadvantage for ourselves because we're playing our comp incorrectly.